God, thank you for the opportunity to join tonight as a group. As always, Lord, we thank you, Lord, just for what's going on in the city, the first start of the year. And God, as we plan for the rest of the year, I ask you, Lord, just to let it have a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm going into the year with a lot of great events planned. And Lord, I just ask you, as always, just continue to watch over the citizens of Columbiana and the people that work with us on a day-to-day basis, and just the people that with fire and EMS and police that protect us. God, I ask you, Lord, just continue to watch over them and their families. And God, I ask you, Lord, just be with the meeting tonight. Let it be for the benefit of the city of all things discussed. And we thank you so much. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. And if you would stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance. Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So while you're looking at the agenda, I'll ask for a roll call.
Councilmember Lilly. Here. Mizell.
Here.
Ruskin.
Here.
King.
Here.
Phillips. Mayor Mitchell.
Here. Okay, looks like we have a quorum here, so we can go ahead and get started. I'll let you again take a few minutes to look at the agenda. Not a whole lot on it today. Hopefully you can all see it well. And we'll start with the consent agenda, which is the approval of the minutes of the January 9th regular council meeting. Council members have got a copy of those minutes. They've had an opportunity to review those. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Okay, if not, let the record show the minutes are approved. And we will move forward with the department head reports, and we start with the police department.
So, everything's green. We are overstaffed. Our new and final employee starts Thursday. His name is J.R. He comes to us from Hartsville, by way of Jefferson County. He's got roughly about 20 years of law enforcement experience, and we're looking forward to get him started. So I said everything's good. Budget's good, training's on course. The only thing that we really got is scams. Shelby County in general, and Shelby, Jefferson, and even Coosa, or Chilton, have just been inundated with this scam. They'll call and tell you that they're a member of the sheriff's department, police department. They'll even use my name. They'll pick a deputy's name, and they'll call and tell you that, hey, you have warrants for failure to show up for jury duty, or whatever the case may be. They'll ask you to obtain X amount of dollars, meet them typically at the courthouse, or the sheriff's department has been the last two that we've dealt with, and tell you to bring cash. The last one that we got, a lady was contacted. She met them at the courthouse. The lady appeared to come out of the courthouse, but she had on a COVID mask and an ID badge, and she got $8,700 and some odd dollars cash money from this lady because she was scared to death that she's going to go to jail for a fake warrant that doesn't exist. We just want everybody to please be aware that the police department, sheriff's department are not going to call you and tell you that you have a warrant or you missed jury duty or anything of that nature, and they're not going to ask you to get cash and bring it to them. It just doesn't happen. That's basically it. We just want everybody to be aware. You receive a phone call from somebody telling you that they're a member of a police department and they want you to bring money to them. Call the sheriff's department, call the police department, call us, and we can tell you quick if you have a warrant. We're not going to call you if we knock on your door. So that's basically it.
How do they get the information? Like to call me, for instance. I mean, are they?
They're just, this guy, and picking a number and calling you. They'll spoof. Everybody knows spoofing. So they'll spoof the sheriff's department's phone number, the 669 or 418, I think is what it is.
Yeah.
They'll spoof that number, and so when you look it back up, it's the sheriff's department number, or it's the City of Columbia Police Department number. And they'll call you and hit you with this scam. Most times they get people just hang up in your face, but they, you know, all it takes is one or two people. Like I said, this poor lady, $8,000 in some change in cash that she had to pull from who knows what to be able to pay this. It's ridiculous. One of the scams I do want to mention, you'll receive a phone call basically along the same lines, and they'll say, hey, and this is typically for people who have family members that are already in jail. They'll say, hey, such and such bail bonds, got your son, you come bond him out at, meet me here with X amount of dollars. Okay? Same thing, bail bondsmen are not gonna call you to tell you to come pay them their money. Okay?
So the price to get out of a warrant is not up for sale, right?
Are you in need?
I don't know, because that's what I called it.
Yeah.
We should ask everybody to be aware, and if you have questions, call us. You know, call the sheriff's department, call us, we can tell you whether it's legit or not. But if they're calling you, it's not legit. We don't pick up the phone and call people until they have warrants. We just don't, and we certainly don't ask for payment.
Okay. Any other questions for the chief? Thanks, sir. Admin.
Everything is good in admin. We're fully staffed, training is up to date. Business license renewals have been mailed out and are coming back in. The section at the bottom, the first section is general fund, revenues and expenses, and then the bottom is all other funds, and we are looking good so far.
Okay. Any questions for the city clerk? Municipal court.
Everything's going well in court. We've done our first two courts of the new year. Next court's February 13th and the 27th. Everything's going well.
Are we set up with, the instructor for the driving school?
As far as I know, John Hall is still teaching driving.
Okay. He's available.
I've not been told any different.
Any other questions for the court? All right, moving right along. Public Works.
Everything's running smooth, pretty good. I don't know, like we got out and cold weather knocked us back a little bit, slowed us down stuff, but we managed to get out and get all the garbage up and everything. We filled another position, a boy that worked here less than a year ago, wanted to come back to work here. He'd been working out of town, his mother's got sick, and him and his sisters had to take care of his mother, and he was traveling all over the United States, so he come back last week. We had an opening, and I rehired him, because I ain't got to teach him that, he already knows what to do. We still got one position open, and we're getting ready, or it's done been submitted to Rebuild Alabama grant that we hope we get to help us out on the paving and stuff and everything.
The grant has been submitted.
Or it's getting ready to be submitted, I know as soon as you approve it and everything.
So did you see the comments today?
No.
Okay. All right, any questions for Alan?
So one open position on that?
Right now.
That's good. No, that was about 4 or 5, that's wrong.
Yeah.
It's good.
Mhm.
Okay, any other questions? All right, do we have any?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Beautification Board. We've got some things coming up, Saturday, March 2nd, at Old Mill Square, Broadway, from 8 to 11 is our Arbor Day tree giveaway, and they'll be there until they're gone. Easter Bunny Tea fundraiser at Old Mill Square, is coming up also March 16th from 1 to 3. And, David Struthers allowed us to decorate the windows on the main street, and Miss Fleegle and her girls have made that look really nice for Christmas and for Valentine's Day now, so y'all know
concern from, I guess, the lady from the Forest Service. Has that got sorted out? I thought we had all that.
Charlene's handling
We
that.
did the proclamation and
Right.
something else last year.
Yeah,
So I've got to submit the application, and then I've got pictures that I can use from beautification boards events.
Okay, so this Arbor Day, there's a difference between
There's a-
Alabama and the
right.
states, so.
Mhm. So ours is, the states is earlier than
So
national.
this one coming up is the state one.
Yes,
Does that satisfy the requirements for the Tree City?
for us it does,
It
yes.
does? Okay. I know last year that was an issue for some reason.
Mhm.
I think it was because of the timing.
Yeah, okay.
But we had a great turnout for that last year,
Yeah.
so we encourage everybody
My
to come
trees
early.
died,
Mine's not,
What kind of trees are they?
they're different, there's,
though.
no, they're not. They're not, they're oaks and, can't remember what, I think there was a magnolia something, I can't remember, anyway, there was like 4 or 5 different.
I'm pretty sure I had something to do with them dying.
You think? No green thumb, but you need to let Kathy handle that then.
Yeah. Okay, were there any other boards that?
The zoning and planning
Okay.
met, we had, met on January the 11th. There's a property on Highway 30 that's not zoned over near Rob McElroy, that has been recommended over to the city. We'll have to have a public hearing on that. Property at Highway 47 wants to be rezoned from RSD to R1. Ryan, you can correct me if any of this is wrong. What was the,
We initiated that rezoning.
Yes.
Of the old driving range.
yes. Over
The
where
RSD, R1.
Yes, where Stansel's property is. We had the Seth Gandy, a simple subdivision request, 720 Highway 47. That motion carried.
I just finished signing everything on it.
You got it, son. And then we had one for Keith Starnes over lots 2 and 3 of a Bentley subdivision. They're actually wanting to combine 2 lots, so that motion carried also. Another one at 255 Bowie Road and wanting to actually turn it into a mobile home subdivision, but that's actually county. Did we determine that was county? Have you heard anything else?
We recommended to him that he come with a proposal for annexation and request zoning at annexation time. It was the attorney speaking for him, I believe.
Yes,
that
it was.
doing all that.
Mhm.
So
And this
there's-
was where?
At Bowie Road.
Okay.
It's several acres. Looks like it initially presented it as a mobile home park, but it's gonna be individual lots, I believe.
The ways,
With mobile homes on them?
right, that's what he said.
Where is Blue Road?
47
Yeah.
South, right?
Right.
On Union Baptist Church.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
But that's not the city limits, though, right?
Parts of Bowie
Part
Road.
of
Parts
it
of
is,
it.
yeah. You get to the end of Bowie Road, there's where this would be.
Yeah,
which is
there's
county.
parts of it in the city, I think, had done the upkeep on Bowie Road itself.
Which part?
And that's why he was wanting to see about coming in to the city is mainly for the road upkeep.
Yeah.
So he was supposed to be presenting, or to the property owners, because our recommendation was to just request zoning at the time of annexation. Otherwise, he has to just go through the county for everything. So that one, we don't know if it'll present, if it'll come to y'all with anything or not.
It's kind of out there in limbo, not knowing. Then we had Corey Ellis and Butch there talking about Hidden Spring subdivision, some property of theirs they're wanting to possibly move forward on another portion of that property for a subdivision, but they don't really have any, they don't know which way they're really gonna go yet, so after the other night, I'm not sure.
A little bit too, it's just that,
Yeah, okay, we'll get you talking about that
The
one.
one on the Gandy one on 47, is that, where's that on 47?
right next to Leslie White.
Whiting.
The lot
Teresa.
next to it?
Mhm.
When it says a simple subdivision, what does that mean?
It's,
Request.
It's
so
a
it doesn't have
family.
to go through the subdivision request as far as like, he's not creating a multi-house subdivision. He's, where the old driveway is, right past Leslie Whiting's, they're gonna split it into 2 lots, one on each side, so that they can have access and build 2 more houses right there. And they're both fairly good-sized lots
Yeah.
comparatively. But a simple subdivision for us doesn't have to go through the public hearing. You doesn't have to have the bonding for water, sewer, and everything like that. It's just, like if you want to divide your family land up into 4 lots, because I think it is 5 or less for a simple subdivision. You know, as long as you wanna divide up your family land to give out, all we do is make sure that you're not creating lots that are too small to build on, and that don't have any road access.
I guess that's R1 right there.
It should be,
Am I understanding you wanna rezone, Bowie Road?
we don't wanna rezone it. There's somebody that wants to, build houses or mobile homes out there,
Uh-huh.
and the land they're looking at is currently in the county, it's not in the city. He came to us to make sure of what our, you know, see what our thoughts were, what we wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And during the meeting, we found that everything he was looking at was in the county, not in the city limits.
Mm-hmm.
And so if he wants Columbiana to, you know, to follow Columbiana's rules for mobile home parks or anything like that,
Mm-hmm.
he would have to annex.
Mm-hmm.
And he can request zoning at the time of annexation. If he doesn't request zoning at the time of annexation, I think we need to, and that's one of the things I want to hit on, is we need to give zoning at time of annexation for every piece of property,
Yes.
so that we no longer annex anything without any zoning restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, it's in the county, and if they want to build a mobile home park, they would have to follow the county's mobile home park rules, which are pretty significant for once you know, because I think it was 10 lots that he was looking at.
That's what he said.
But all of them would be like 20,000
Who was
square
the
foot
gentleman?
lots or something.
There was an attorney there speaking for him, so.
Yeah, it was an attorney speaking.
Well, as I understand
At
our
the very
city
end of
attorney,
Bowie Road,
if it's in the
what
city
was that?
limits, we have
From
to
the
sign
mountains
it.
and-
And we have some property that's not zoned.
So we,
Oh, do you? That's what he's
over the
talking
years,
about.
we've had some annexations that weren't zoned,
Yeah,
and they will continue to cause issues.
Well, to your point,
That property.
I think that should be, you may mention that, but I think that should be a criteria before we annex anything, it needs to be zoned.
Oh.
Well, we can pre-zone it, you know,
Yeah.
until we annex it, and then we go back.
Then it goes, yeah, it's a 2-step process, but
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't know why we wouldn't wanna do that either.
yeah.
Plus, the landowner needs to realize that if he's gonna come in, you got to bring that road up to the city standards before we can accept it.
Right.
That's gonna be a big cost.
There's a county, it's a county road currently, but the city did the last paving on it.
It's the city's responsibility stops at the end of that pavement.
And that's what we think too. Some of the property is still on the pavement, and the way the road curves, and the rest of it's gonna be at the end. But, you know, over the years, you may not hear from him again, you may hear the same conversation 6 more times, or he may come with an annexation request at the next meeting. You know, there's no way to tell.
Don't know.
Yeah.
Don't know. Yep. All right, I guess that's it. I don't remember anything else.
Any other boards, committees? All right, thank you. All right, are you Amy Dixon?
She sent it in as the secretary for the commission,
Okay.
this was everybody from the meeting. We started probably in 2021, we started rewriting some zoning ordinances and looking at them. And I know, Mr. Mitchell, you came to several, and we had some conversations. We kind of put it on pause to, you know, especially to get everything, you know, a little bit more thought process. Bill Justice gave us a lot of insight to it as well. What we're looking at is, I was mentioning with Corley and Butch came in for Hidden Springs. When Hidden Springs was zoned, right now, and Dale's not here, so I don't know if we found any of the old records or anything to see what was approved back in 2000. From what Butch and Corley had was that land, there was some residential special district, just like there across from, on Highway 70, across from 26, that got approved. This was been approved in 99 or 2000, and he did start the dirt work. He cut the roads. He only built what was there now, but everything else is also, he has roads cut through there, and that plan had 30, I believe, of the smaller lot residential special district, smaller homes, and more built there. I believe it was, what do you say, 30 or 40 acres?
Well, yeah, 34.
Um,
He
I may have that here, I should look.
He was saying something about 50 homes already there.
Yeah, and, I mean, it's gonna be, several more planned there, but at least 30 more homes. But I wanna say that's probably the residential special district is probably the 30 more homes and more, the larger homes to get us up to around the 50 number. But that'll be something else that that was approved in 2000, when we had a residential special district zoning that we no longer have. But because they invested money in it, legally, we're probably going to have to find that answer. So I know Dale's looking at that, and probably having to go to the county to see what has been filed on the land and everything as well, so I'm not sure. But right now, currently, we have R1, R2, and R3, and that's all we have in our zoning districts. We don't have any planned unit developments, we don't have anything that allows for townhomes, and I'm not advocating for any of these, I'm just stating that our current ordinance has 3 residential zonings. What's listed and exempted in our commercial zonings is very broad and doesn't cover, because it was written in the 50s, doesn't cover today's expectations. Our main request today is on the R3. I would like to see if we can do a pause or a moratorium on approving any further R3 subdivisions, until we can, not forever, not saying that we want to halt any growth. I want to halt growth under our current zoning, because when we started looking at this, even when they were talking about the subdivisions there, 20 and 70, or 70 and 26, Columbiana had 1,000 to 1,100 rooftops in the city limits. We're gonna be at 1,600 and something at the end of this year, which means 45% of our rooftops were built in the last 3 years, and all of them built in an R3, which is our least restrictive zone. All of the requests that we seem to be getting and all the discussions we get, because a lot of it is not requests, most of what we get is discussion. People want to come and just kind of quote unquote feel us out, see what we think. But all of them over the last several years have been wanting R3. There's been other land further down 70 that the builders approached us with, and we, as a city, did not have the funds to increase the water and sewer down to reach them, but that would have been, almost 2,000 homes. And it would have been built on one of our only 3 residential zoning districts. So our request as a commission is that we move forward in a new zoning ordinance. We have a copy that we worked on. We did hit pause after we had some other work sessions. We had talked to the fire department and the police department at that time to get recommendations in a lot of our work sessions. But, some of that would need to be just, updated a little bit. But we do have a copy that we can submit for y'all to look at. But I would like to see a moratorium or a pause on any R3 subdivision approvals. Now, how we word that, I think that's gonna be a Bill Justice question, because we're not saying a pause on all subdivisions, because I don't wanna stop a simple subdivision like Seth Gandy did. But I don't want to be, and a lot of this comes from, if y'all aren't aware, Supreme Court of Alabama made a ruling in the last couple of months that if you deny someone's request at the planning commission level, you have to give them a reason. That's always been the law, but they've struck down a lot of cases in neighboring cities and all over the state. With their last ruling they came out with was that just stating that that's gonna cause too much traffic or blanket public safety issue is not enough of a reason to deny. So it's getting harder to have a reason to not wanting that subdivision. So the way to the way to control the growth is to do it with the ordinance. beforehand, so that everybody coming into the city to buy land knows what they can build, what size lots they can build on, and it's clear before they come to the commission or the council. And that's what I would like to have, is an ordinance that lays it all out. And they know what's available, and we don't have to worry about variances as much, because it just puts it all out there for any builder or anyone that wants to build in Columbiana, that they would have a roadmap on our website called our ordinances to tell them what they can and can't do. I've emailed this, Amy worked on a presentation, which is what I'm reading off of. I've emailed it to Charlene. I can email her the current copy of the ordinances that we've been working on as well. A lot of this, what we're looking at is the current projects. You've got Springs Crossing, Saddlewood Trails, Hidden Springs coming up. We have the same company that's doing Saddlewood, also did off Joynertown Road. But we also have people that have already been emailing Dale about large acreage plots here in Columbiana. And every one of them are interested in R3, which is the least restrictive, most populated ordinance.
Well, to your point, Ryan, and we, I feel like I'm an old guy up here, but, you know, I've been close to, you know, 3 terms now. And when I first started this journey, the question was, the conversation was that in the past, we hadn't been developer friendly.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that sort of opened up the conversation of allowing people to come into the city to build. And just my opinion, I think we've got to a point to where we have been builder friendly. And every time these subdivisions come up, our first question is like I asked you, what's the zoning?
Mm-hmm.
I've always been a fan of R1. And there was a conversation a long time ago to where it's not the city's responsibility to make money for the developer.
Correct.
It is the city's responsibility to control growth within its city and make amends with both of that. I mean, that can work together. You know, obviously with developers, interest rates have helped in the last few years, and I think from the housing market, the interest rates are going to take care of a lot of that growth in the next little bit, probably, maybe, I don't know.
I think one thing to remember with the interest rates, the housing prices are being controlled by large LLCs. They're buying entire subdivisions and controlling the supply.
Well, there's even
And
conversation.
it's all everything's for rent, because you have large LLCs buying entire subdivisions so that they can control the supply in the market.
And while public safety and infrastructure is not a reason, it is a reason. And I would add to that too, the schools is the other reason to that. But now I think we're in a position where we can't say that we have not been developer friendly. And I mean, it is, I hope it's on paper somewhere that I've never been a fan of R3 in a lot of cases, and especially now that we've got so much to be and develop. I think it's important. You know, we talk about, Charlie and I was in a meeting last week, and we were raising the banner for being in the LMI track, low to moderate income. And that helps us out for a lot of grants, and that's a great thing. But I think at some point we have to determine, do we want to stay there or we want to try to move up to another level? And I agree that I'm not a fan of R3, and I'll just throw that out there in terms of right now, because considering I think we've got a good development going on out there, it's just, there's a lot of impact to that development, I think, and there's just, I agree with what you're saying, and I think we need to just have a discussion about it just to see.
Yeah. Well, my concern with it's not just R3.
Yeah.
R1, R2 and R3 are multifamily. Right. So R3 currently, it's the subdivisions we have, but now that land 20 years from now can all be apartments, because that's what's allowed in R3.
Right.
Because there's no definition between R3 single family home and R3 multifamily. It's all lumped together because we only have 3 choices when we could have as many as we want right now to help control that land for years to come. See, we get hung up on looking at what is being built there instead of just, we're making we're making a label for the land for what can be built there 20, 30, 40 years,
Yeah.
2 years down the road. And right now, we have 3 labels, and it's, you can have our most restrictive or our least restrictive.
Mhm.
Hardly anybody does R2, unless they're building the duplexes, which have been built around town. I mean, to the mayor's point, you know, our census population was 4,552. When we started the comprehensive plan, it was 5,000, so it did go down. There was some need for growth.
Mhm.
There was need for subdivisions. But I'm with you, I think we are on the upswing of that, and if we don't have more choices, 30 years from now, all that land is still gonna be available for apartment buildings.
Well, the other thing that I found out too, that I'm just not privy to the zoning stuff too, and this is happening in other municipalities, to your point about the LLCs buying up these subdivisions. And this is something maybe, I don't know how we start this conversation too, so Ricky Rustin buys a house in one of these subdivisions, and the homeowner association, well, they can't rent out this property. Well, there's loops around that to where people can go in there and they can rent out those properties and not, so there's loopholes, 2 loopholes that I found out to where we need to really look into that too, to say, if Ricky Russin buys that house, maybe he can't rent it, and if he does with another LLC, they can't rent it either. 'Cause I think, or something like, I'm not real privy on that, but I was just, my eyes were open to those loopholes that sort of, and that's happening in other municipalities. But I think,
Other municipalities also, if you're renting your house, will charge you a business
Yeah.
fee, and to get water turned in, you have to
yeah,
show your renter's agreement, and then that way you know
yeah.
to bill for the business of renting.
And this is my last comment. Well, I think Columbiana is a great place. I've been here all my life, and I'll probably never leave. But there are reasons that people are leaving neighboring municipalities to get here. And if you asked every one of the majority of those people, they're gonna tell you the same thing. I've got 2 in my subdivision right now that they can tell you for a matter of fact, they moved here simply because of stuff happened in the city they were in, that it's just mad chaos, basically. So, I mean, that is a true conversation. So you gotta look at the people while they're coming here, not developers, but while people are moving here. They're moving in groves to get here because they're not happy while the things are going elsewhere. So I've been sitting on this a while, and like I said, the city's not in the business to make money to developers. We're in a business to set controls around that, to allow the people to live and go about what they do. That's just my opinion. So, yeah.
Well, and that's, all we're looking for is, I really do think we need to hit a pause and put it with a time limit. And that's just until we can get ordinances that everybody agrees on.
True, I agree with that.
You know, that, we just don't have enough choices to label the land other than B1, B2, R1, R2, R3.
Mhm.
You know, and I know that there's an expense with having a company write that. There's an expense for us going through and trying to nibble away at all these things that we want as a city to be rezoned as well. So, you know, we're not trying to spend money that we don't have. And that's why we're coming to y'all and asking for y'all to look at it, and you can look at what we have, and if y'all, you know, just to move forward. But I do think it starts with, we can't just tell people, all right, we're not approving any more R3s.
Sure.
Because we don't have that authority. I believe y'all do. That would be a bill justice question. You can put a moratorium on styles of houses and, you know, different things. I say bill justice, I know he's retired. City attorney question. I've just been saying that for the last 12 to 15 years. But I do have a copy of the zoning ordinances that we've been working on. I'll send them to Charlene. She may have a copy already for y'all to look at. But we do strongly recommend that we get a pause of some type on the R3 until we can get maybe even R2 and R3 until we can get something written down.
And I don't know that conversation the conversation could be based on location, because the reason I say that too, because I've always said that it benefits us to have a subdivision, people having to come through the city to get home. You know, I mean, it's out there on the outskirts, there's really no, I mean, they can get to Calera or almost Alabaster before they can get to our place. I mean, I think the benefit of having a subdivision here in town is beneficial, right? Because I mean, it helps the businesses that are here versus
Yes,
the convenience of just turning left and going.
I agree with that.
So I've always said that, but I mean, I think it's a good conversation. I think it's, you know, the market is not as hot as it used to be, and I just think the conversation needs to happen regardless of what route we go. I think it's a good topic for sure.
Any other comments from the
No.
council? Well, like, and I've already run this by Bill Justice, so I'm gonna go ahead and talk to you about what Bill said about those areas that are already zoned R3. Ryan, you will know this, I'm sure. And we don't have a lot of areas already zoned R3. So for those areas already zoned R3, if a developer meets the requirements of the subdivision regulations, then the planning commission has no discretion and must approve the subdivision request. The city council doesn't play a role in the subdivision process and cannot prohibit it by moratorium or otherwise. The planning commission for approving the subdivision. But even with subdivision approval, the developer must still, or the property owner, must still comply with the R3 zoning requirements. If there's something wrong with those requirements, they need to be amended. Okay, and that, I know that's what you guys have been working on. Otherwise, the city cannot stop a developer or a property owner who is complying with the existing requirements. So my concern was twofold. Does the council have the authority to put a moratorium on R3 subdivisions, because we have ordinances which have the effect of law that have been adopted by the council, and we also have subdivision regulations that have been adopted by the planning commission. So I wasn't quite sure if we would even have the authority to do a moratorium. So if it's not already zoned R3, and that's what you want to put a moratorium on or potentially consider, it says, although municipalities, this is from Bill, by the way, I sent it to both Bill and Josh because I never know right now who's going to answer. So, although municipalities may place a moratorium on rezonings under certain circumstances, this power should be used sparingly. There must be some overriding public need justifying the moratorium. Examples he uses is such as proliferation of businesses such as vape shops, tattoo parlors, payday loans, etc., with inadequate zoning and other regulations in place. And to your point that you made earlier, it says the moratorium must be limited to the minimum amount of time period sufficient to develop the needed regulations. So, if we have some property that's developed, that's been zoned recently R3, and it's underdeveloped. And from just looking at the zoning map, I believe all of the other R3 properties that we have already been developed. Now, they could be redeveloped. There could be some changes on how they're utilized, and as long as they fit the zoning ordinance and et cetera, then the owner and the developer would have the authority to be able to do that. But most of the property that we have, residential property, is either R1 or R2 that's not already developed or underdeveloped. And in order for someone to try to do something R3, they would have to first come to the planning commission, present their plan. There would have to be a public hearing, and the planning commission would make a recommendation, yeah, we'll go R3, or we won't go, we don't approve the R3 subdivision. If you disapproved it, then that developer or property owner, because even when you make that recommendation, since you don't, you, the planning commission, doesn't establish the zoning ordinances, it has to come to the city council. And the city council also has to have another public hearing to determine whether or not it would like to do it, to make a change from R1 or R2 to R3 or whatever other zoning category. So my point is this. We already have that process in place to consider each one on a case by case. It is possible that a property owner, for example, could submit a plan to the planning commission and to the city council, which would require R3 development, or that they would want R3 development in, that would make a lot of sense and be good for the city. For example, included in that might be development of property that's going to include some retail development that the city needs. It may include some parks and things that would be open to the public. Whereas the housing might still be R3. I wouldn't want to slam the door on that. And, you know, when Bill says that the moratorium would have to be for a limited length of time, what does that mean? You know, how long is too long? I don't know. So I personally like the democratic process where we have public hearings, we get to hear from the public, we get to hear the recommendations of the planning commission, who are the city's experts. Then it comes before the council, and we get to have another public hearing, hear from the public. As you know as well as I do, a lot of people show up for that, so again, it's pretty much left up to us. And then we get to vote on it at that time. And so rather than slam the door with a moratorium, I think the safeguards are already in place.
Well, the reason why we started this process is because we have to have a reason to deny.
Exactly.
And if there's, you know, what we have for reasons to deny, all we have is future planned use of that's in the comprehensive plan, or, you know, we don't have the sewer capacity, we don't have the water capacity, you know, infrastructure demand says we can't accept new taps, or we can't, you know, either one of those. So we would have to have a reason that we can articulate to deny the request to move this piece of property from R1 to R3.
You know, I'm not certain about that, and I think it warrants additional. But as I understood the recent decision, I think it was a Supreme Court decision, it was denying a subdivision that complied with all the regulations and ordinances in place for a specific zoning category like R3. In other words, it wasn't somebody who was wanting to make it a smaller lot than what's already allowed in R3. It wasn't that they were wanting to, what was happening was the Planning Commission, in this particular case that was cited by the Supreme Court, was saying, no, we want them to be bigger than that. So the developer, in this case, was already meeting all the requirements of the R3 zoning ordinance and the subdivision regulations. And the reason for denying it was, to your point, generalized safety or whatever, you know. It didn't have the specifics, and the court says, no, you gotta give me some specifics. Why is that unsafe? But I don't think it applied to rezoning property from R1 or R2.
That case did not, but there has been more coming through the appeals
Yeah.
that deal with that. And
So I think
what
that,
we had, like, all
Yeah.
we have to fall back on is the comprehensive plan, the maps that are set forth
Right.
in that. And, you know, this is what it currently is, this is what we decided in our plan, our city plan,
right,
that future land use for this piece of land would be this. But if it matches, then there's,
well, so,
you know, you're out of reason.
so you know these planning ordinances and regulations, and you know the zoning stuff better than I do. But, you know, there's this vague terminology in the case studies that are in the code of Alabama that says that the
the comprehensive plan, or the, as they call it, they use a different term besides comprehensive plan, but municipal planning or whatever. It says it has some legal effect. That's some sort of terminology. Now, what that means, I don't know. The way I've interpreted it is you have this comprehensive plan done, which is a requirement of the planning commission to do. And so it's saying, and you're supposed to go out and you have public hearings when you do that, and you have all these studies and analysis. So therefore, they say if you do all that, which is required by the statute, then you ought to pay attention to it. You ought to follow it. But the comprehensive plan, when it talks about residential and commercial and business, those are broad categories that don't break it down into R1, R2, or R3. It just says this area is residential, or this area is neighborhood commercial, whatever that means. Because those aren't zoning classifications. So, as long as we consider the comprehensive plan, and you know how I feel about that, I think that should have been updated before you tackled the zoning, because the zoning ordinances are designed to implement the comprehensive plan. It's not the other way around. But anyway, I just don't think the need's there, because we consider each one on a case-by-case basis for the moratorium, but also would like to find out more about the impact of the Supreme Court decision that you referenced, as well as, like I said, I don't think it applies to rezoning. I think it applies to currently zoned property, but that's my opinion. Was on the subdivision itself, but, just the rezoning, if that's the only thing that we can put a moratorium on. My thought on the moratorium is it puts us on a time clock to get the new ordinances written. To get, if we wanna do the comprehensive plan. Yeah. Well, Then so we again, put ourselves on a time clock and we get it done. so looking at the statute and what the requirements are for the planning commission, zoning is not your primary purpose. In fact, it's not a planning and zoning commission, it's a planning commission. Now, the zoning ordinances implement the plan, okay? And there was a zoning commission back in 1958 when our zoning ordinances were written, but once they were written and adopted, it was disbanded, because that's what the statute says. So, so my point is, I think we are adequately covered, but I think the concern is well taken, and I think we can address it. And I think before we make any decisions about moving forward with a moratorium, if we have the ability to do that, I think we need a little bit more legal guidance, and maybe we could have, at a planning commission meeting, have Bill or Josh or somebody come talk to us about it, get some clarity on what the Supreme Court ruling really meant. But I think the protections are already there, if you will, and we can do what's the right thing. What I don't want to do is slam the door on something if a property owner or a developer brings something to us that is beneficial to the city, and we say, sorry, I can't do it, we have a moratorium on it. And so we all go back to economic development, we talk about how we want, we have shops closing on Main Street, and we want to have, more businesses and stuff like that. And it's that chicken and egg scenario. Do we get more rooftops, or do we get more businesses first to attract the rooftops? And it's a little both. And so we got to kind of noodle our way through that and be careful that we don't shoot ourselves in the foot.
Yeah.
But would R3, would R3 involve retail businesses?
No.
Those are pretty neat.
Right, so, yeah, so, okay.
But for example, a developer could come in and say, just as was done at Springs Crossing, and say, I want this portion of this property to be R3, and I want this to be B1 or B2, but it's all part of the same master development. But then if they can't get their R3, then the B1 stuff that would be beneficial to the city as a whole might not come. They might be willing to do that. We've looked at some tentative plans from another developer who is considering the potential, at least at this point in time, of, developing a park area that's open to the public, retail spaces, open to the public, recreation facilities like tennis courts and a recreation center that would be part of their development, but open to the public. Portions of it they would keep for the community, if you will. And so I think we ought to be able to consider those things on a case-by-case basis and not slam the door shut.
Yeah, I'm up for finding out what legally our authority is to what we can and cannot do first. I agree with that completely, and to see, and then after that's determined, I think we have the conversation of how we want. I mean, I like the democratic process too as well. But I think we need to determine what we can or can't do. If the planning commission says no, then is that a no, or does it come to the council? But I think we need to determine what that's.
Well, I've already.
Yeah, I know,
figured
yeah.
that out with-
Anything that, if we don't recommend it, I think it still has to come.
Yeah, for a public hearing, yeah. So, and if the council says no, then is that it? I think we need just to make sure that that's determined before we move forward. But I think this conversation needs to stay at the forefront and be, something needs to come out of this conversation, I
Yeah,
think.
if we don't have the legal authority for a moratorium, or we don't agree that that's the route to take, I personally believe that it's not just rooftops that is gonna make Columbiana a better place. It's gonna be a mixture of rooftops. While our population.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. I'm just saying, I don't want us to shoot ourselves in the foot
Right.
if somebody
45%
comes
of our subdivisions
with
are
good
always
ideas.
R3, the least restricted. We don't have anybody wanting to build on R1, or our most restricted.
But it goes back to what I mentioned to.
Yeah. How do we do that? Is that a planned unit development where we have some of each? Is that, how do we get to there? I wish I had all those answers. The median income for the city of Columbiana increase is what's gonna drive businesses.
Right.
Well,
The first
density does too.
But density has its limits.
It does. But we are very low density too.
Yeah, median household income, it increases a lot, based, on what other cities can provide.
Mhm.
But it's not just that, it's the housing market that we have, has been stagnant for so long, now we have a little bit growing, but we still don't have, we have a lot of, what it was put at in several, like when Stancil first ran for mayor, we have starter homes and retirement homes, not a lot of in between for as families grow. Well, we've increased 45% of our rooftops, and we still haven't closed that
Yeah,
gap.
I agree with you. To your point, if
So
you look at
an
the
ordinance
last,
that would allow us to not just be more builder friendly for R3, but
Yeah.
to get a little bit of,
Yeah.
to meet the needs everywhere instead of this is the easiest and where the builder can make the most money.
if you look at the last 5 years, we see the growth in Springs Crossing, the development out there now across the street, Saddlewood Trails. But we've only averaged about 35 homes a year over the last 5 years. It hasn't been a
And
lot.
it's
Now,
been fast.
there's a lot of still,
Saddlewood's going pretty quick, but it's.
well, they're building houses. They're building spec houses in Saddlewood, which that's what D.R. Horton does. They build a lot of spec houses. For Springs Crossing, they're more aligned with, selling lots, having a buyer and building. They do build a few spec homes and stuff like that. But my point is this, there's still a lot of room for growth in those two subdivisions. And And so I think we have some time before there's ample opportunity for affordable housing and starter housing or retirement housing in those two areas. I just, again, I don't like to slam the door shut as long as we have another way to regulate it on a case-by-case basis, and I think we do, because we don't have any. I'm not aware, I looked at the zoning map very quickly, but I don't think we have any R3 zone land that's not already developed or has approved plans for development. So the only way to get there would be to rezone it, and this goes back to the question that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
I think that's up to us.
If we get, Bill to come to a meeting and let us know, what we have legally that would hold up under an appeal, denying a zoning request, maybe we would feel more comfortable with that. So that's still a step in the right direction for us. But I still think it ends with updated ordinances, period, all the way across the board.
Yeah, but going back to that, the point I was gonna make earlier is, you don't have to do them all at once. You've always had the authority to amend ordinances. And so if there's some concerns over the R3, and you want to propose an amendment to it, you can do that without it might be difficult for us to swallow them all at one time anyway.
And that's, we were looking at redoing a lot of the ordinances and, all the way across the zoning ordinance in general. I emailed Charlene what we've had. There were sections that we pulled out, just for Bill to look at to get through residential. We can do them residential, we can do commercial, we can break them apart and then, implement them. Charlene can get everybody need an email copy. If we wanna sit down and do a work session together with y'all, with planning commission and y'all as well, I'm on board with that. We can get the department heads to come in and we can get them copies, get everybody involved, or if we wanna hire a company to look at it and present us with updated ordinances. I'm definitely on board with that. We can start the process, but I think it needs to be a continual process.
Yeah.
That, we look at the ordinance and then within every 2 years, we look at, somebody looks at the comprehensive plan and makes recommendations for updates, but we have to get something set up to where when it's no longer Ryan and who's on the commission and y'all and who's on the council there, that there's a plan set forth for whoever's still in the seat.
I agree.
To move forward.
There's several of you guys on the council on the commission that are extremely knowledgeable and, don't ever get on the same bus, cause I'm afraid something might happen to you. Cause we desperately need what you guys do. It's probably, I think, and I've said this time and time again, the planning commission is one of the most demanding, commissions and boards that we have. It's one of the most essential, and it's surely the most unforgiving. So it's a tough job, and we appreciate what every one of you do.
The other question I had was on the zoning board of appeals, and this just came to me. Have we found any new members for the zoning board of appeals?
I think it's actually called the zoning board of adjustments.
Adjustment, that's what it is. I never
No,
used the
we
full name.
need to work that.
Yeah, because, I think with me and Rob being on both, it kinda hurts us because that's where you take your appeal from the planning commission and two of the members are on both.
Well, I looked at that last time, and I'm probably wrong, because I can't sometimes get confused with what I remember looking at. But I only think one of you is allowed to be on the planning board. I think you only have one member from the planning commission. I may be wrong there, but maybe not.
And that may be, but there's two of us
Yeah.
on there right now. So
And it's probably because you've been there forever, and it was a
nobody's.
changeover like that. But anyway, we need to work on that, so I
Just
agree.
wanted to remind them.
Thank you for that tickler. I think that was a good discussion.
Yep, thanks for coming, Ryan.
Hey,
No, I mean, we missed it.
Yeah.
we are 100% open with having a work session,
Okay.
and just, It'll put you right to
Right,
sleep.
so, right to
So,
sleep.
start it at lunch.
I know other ways of getting sleepy without having to do that. Anyway. All right, any other discussion on that? Thanks, Ryan, appreciate that. Okay, resolution authorizing me to sign a contract with DH Grants. This has to do with, we put in a AFG grant, Assistance to Firefighters grant, last year, and we used, I think, the firm that we've used for grant writing, and it's the first time that they've done a grant for us. They've only done like 30. 2 of them were approved, this one was not approved. So Johnny has found another individual. He's really, really cheap, but he also has a lot of experience on this particular subject matter. So this is allowing me to enter into an agreement for this guy to work our assistance firefighter grants. We're still looking to try to get grant money for a new fire truck.
Well, this is actually for the air packs.
Oh, this is for the air
This is
packs?
for the air packs.
Well, we may go for the fire truck too. So,
I'll make a motion with set resolution 012402 is authorizing the mayor to sign a contract with DH Grants.
Second.
okay, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Lilly,
Yes.
Mizell,
Yes.
Ruskin,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Mayor Mitchell.
Yes. Okay. So, resolution passes. Any other city business anybody wants to bring up? I'll bring up one thing that I just kind of stumbled on today, and has similar to the zoning board of adjustments. We have a board called, what's it called? The Board of Adjustments and Appeals or something like that. And I started looking at the membership, and some are no longer with us, literally. Not here anymore. And so I began to look up, and I looked on our website, it says that their requirement is to address property abatements. We just went through a big property abatement, we never went before this board of adjustments and appeals. And so I went to the Code of Alabama, looked through the statutes of all the statutorily authorized boards and commissions, and there's not a board of adjustments and appeals in the statutes of Alabama, which makes it an advisory board. And that means the city council can decide to disband it. And I wouldn't do it today, but I do think we ought to consider disbanding that board, because we went through an exhaustive process with public hearings under the guidance, and at the end of the day, if we had that board addressing abatement issues, it still have to come before us. And we hired an attorney who specialized in that, and it came before us, and we had the public hearings. I just don't think that they're necessary. So we might want to consider that in another council meeting, adopt a resolution to disband. Any other city business? Our news report. There was supposed to be an Alabama legislative preview at Jeff State on the 12th of January. It was canceled due to inclement weather. They say 2% never get the word, and that was me. So I showed up there. There was a lot of food. But I said, no, I'm going to go have lunch with my wife. So that's what we did. So it's not going to be rescheduled because the legislative session begins on February 6th, and we really don't have an opportunity to have another one of those previews. It's a shame because that's really good, at least the ones that I've been to get an overview of what this legislature is going to be taking up in the next session. So on February 28th, we do this every year. We have the State of Our Community Luncheon. This is put by the Shelby County Chamber of Commerce, and all the municipalities in the county present a state of their community presentation. Last 7 minutes is the time limit. And so I sent you guys a note. It doesn't have to be me, does it? It can be one of our council members to do it. So if you're interested in doing that, please let me know. And I did talk to Ally this morning. We've been gathering, little snippets of video to try to put together sort of a marketing video. And I was hoping, so we didn't have to talk a whole lot at this, community luncheon on the state of the community, that maybe we could put together a 3-minute marketing video for the city, saying here's what's happening in Columbiana, and then, so we're looking into that.
What time does that mean?
Oh, it's usually a luncheon thing, that people start showing up at 11, they're pretty, hard start at 11:30 usually, and then it's over by 1. And, they try to keep us to 7 minutes, and I find it's actually hard to get it done in 7 minutes, but that's me. So if you're interested in doing that, let me know. Announcements.
Alright, so, this is the old one.
Well, it looks good.
Yeah, that's correct. The Cowboy Day is February the 24th. We are working on summer schedule and Liberty Day bands and all those fun things. So if you know a band and they're good, send them our way. I've already gotten 3 music on Main scheduled, so I'm going to do music on Main all summer long. So every Friday night, June and July.
So we talked about the Liberty Day a little bit at the Cowboy Day.
Yes,
Have you already talked to the, what do you call him, the promoter or whatever?
yes. So we have booked Shimmer Band for Friday night.
That's already booked?
Done.
That's one that we.
Yeah, so they're a lot of fun, and they'll bring, the horns, so it'll be great.
Yeah, they were here 3 years ago, I guess.
I think so.
And, the good thing is they stay a lot late. They stay longer than they were supposed to, and I think everybody enjoyed it.
Saturday night band still up in the air?
We can't announce until March.
Oh.
We don't have a.
Well, that's a no.
It's not official till it's
It's
announced.
not official.
Obviously, there's no democratic process to that.
We'll announce it.
Do you know who it is? Do you
No.
Do you have a concern with it?
No.
Yeah, well, again, even though we might announce it in March, I do still think that we should have a
Yes,
voice
absolutely. We
before
can
we
say,
announce it.
yeah,
I'm kidding.
we can say.
But it's a point about that. Sometimes when you're tongue in cheek, you really mean it. All right. Anything else? Any questions for Alan? All right, we've had a lot of discussion here lately. Any more comments from anybody? Questions, comments? I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Give me a first.
Let's try that again.
First.
Make a